Okay, YouTube, good to go. Instagram, good to go. Lighting isn't fantastic in here, but we're going to work with what we got. What do we got? We got beer because it's Monday night. That's what we got. We're just going to adjust this camera. Yeah, I'll take that. I'll take that. This isn't the best framing of my life, but we're going to work with it. We're going to go with it, friends, because it's Monday night and there's a wind. There's a mighty wind blowing. It's blowing across the land. Something, 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 and something, I think, that rhymed with man. Whoa, and I just knocked over my Instagram machine. Oh, no, this is a disaster. Oh, Erica just joined. She just missed me knocking over the Instagram machine. How embarrassing. Glad she wasn't here for that. Golly. So anyway, hey, kids, 9:15 on a Monday night. You know what we're going to do? We're going to drink some beer, obviously. Come on. So I got a bit of an itch. The little beard here. Got it there. Hey, check it out. You know what I did the other day? And by the other day, I mean yesterday. But I also did it on Saturday. I did it 2 days in a row. It's a habit now. I went and I bought some beer. Now, I know what you're thinking. That's not that exciting. I buy a lot of beer a lot of the time. But you want to know why it was exciting for me? Because I bought it at a bar. And I walked out with it. I walked out with a cooler full of cans. And actually, they poured some ice in on top. It was a nice touch. Because, of course, as we've discussed, bars are allowed to do off-license sales now. And amazingly, they've been doing it for a few weeks. Teenage pregnancy hasn't spiked. There aren't death and carnage on the roads. Who knew? Turns out we can just buy beer wherever we want and not cause complete societal meltdown. So that's exciting. So anyway, what did I find myself purchasing? Well, on Saturday when I went to Castro's Lounge, I was going straight, not that this has anything to do with the selection, but I'm just filling you in on the backstory. I was going straight from the bar to the beach with the beer. Is this illegal? Yes. Is that stupid? Also, yes. So anyway, when you buy the beer from wherever you're buying it from, as far as they're concerned, you're taking it home. It has nothing to do with them at that point. It's all on me. I took it to the beach and I drank it and I liked it. And I got Canuck because I like a good Canuck Pale Ale from our friends of the pod, Great Lakes Brewing. However, on Sunday when I went, I thought, I've had Canuck a couple of times recently and I love it. But I like variety. It is the spice of life, is what they tell me. So I picked up this bad boy, holding it up for the cameras here. This is a Woodhouse Brewing Co. IPA beer. Pride of Toronto, apparently. I thought they were outside of the city for some reason, but it says Toronto right here on the can, so you can't argue with that. Beautiful teal can. Woodhouse has in a good way, very simple branding. I like it, very clean. Got a piece of wood on it, which makes sense for Woodhouse. Never really knew if it was referring to the house was made out of wood or it was a house to contain wood. Who knows? Maybe the people at Woodhouse, but I sure don't. Anyway, I'm going to crack into this bad boy and we're going to have it. I only normally typically drink Woodhouse beers. That's a good sound. At Lamport Stadium. Oh, look, I'm using my fancy IPA glass if you're watching the videos. Yeah, Woodhouse often serving their beer at Lamport for the Wolfpack games or for the Toronto Arrows games when they're there and not at York. And it's not that they're not available other places, but I often find myself grabbing a Woodhouse beer from the beer garden at Lamport. Maybe we'll talk more about that after I've talked about the beer. We don't need to get into that right now. I tend to go on about that. So I'll go on about that in a little while. Let's deal with the beer first. Woodhouse Brewing IPA. This is a beer I've had multiple times, including today and yesterday. So no surprises here. That's the good news. Nice looking white head there. You see that if you're watching the video? Beautiful orangey amber color. Think we're going to have something in here along the lines of Munich or Vienna. You know how I always like to claim that. Wouldn't be surprised. This has got some darkness to it. Not a dark beer, but it's not just two-row. It's got something with a little color in there. Maybe a little caramel, something. It's interesting because on the nose, actually, just reminded me of, what did it remind me? You know what it reminds me of, actually, a little bit? It reminds me of Dale's Pale Ale from, shoot, who makes Dale's Pale Ale? It's not Great Divide. Oh, I've completely forgotten. That's weird. It's almost as if I've had like close to 10 concussions in my life. Can't really remember. Anyway, it's got something like that. There's some crystal malt in here. I'm almost going to guarantee you. There's some crystallized malt, which gives it a sugary, caramelly kind of thing. Because I definitely get some crystally smelling kind of malt on the nose. Or like I say, it might not be crystal. It could be like a really healthy shot of something like Vienna with a bit of sweetness to it. But I think there's some crystal malt. There was a period in Ontario when every IPA had honey malt in it, and honey malt is nice, and it was interesting the first couple of times, but then it became the done thing, and that's just gets boring. Oscar Blues, thank you. Josh Lake, friend of the pod. Oh, I didn't anonymize you. Josh L. No, wait, that's too obvious. Let's go with Jay Lake. Oscar Blues is who makes Dale's Pale Ale. That's why I keep people around. I appreciate the help, buddy. How you been, pal? We haven't talked enough recently. Let's not do it now, but soon. All right. Camping, eh? We're talking about that. Sorry, this is the worst podcast content in the world. Josh's family and our family, we're good buddies. Yeah, give them your home address. Yeah, I double dare me. We like to hang out, Josh and I. We're good buddies. This beer has crystal malt in it. Let's drink it and see what's going on. Okay, here's what's happening with this beer. Like I said, I've been drinking it today, yesterday. It's great. I like it, but I haven't really been thinking too much about it. When you're sucking beer out of a can on a beach, playing guitar, feeling like you're channeling your inner Jimmy Buffett, you're not necessarily going full on Cicerone on these beers. Not that I'm a Cicerone, by the way. No qualifications whatsoever. Just putting that out there right now. But here's what's happening with this beer. I'm going to have another sip. You remember like a minute ago when I was saying how there was a period in Ontario when every IPA had crystal malt in it? And that was just the done thing. This is one of those beers. It has crystal malt in it. And while I was being critical of the idea that like it just kind of came the done thing, the reality is the reason why it was a done thing is because it worked well. IPAs, especially if you use earlier hopping, can be very, very aggressively bitter. And crystal malt is notably sweet. Even as a malt, it's sweet for a malt. And so it balances out the hop in a very efficient way is what it comes down to. This one's good. It's not aggressively crystal malted. You would get some that would be almost actually sweet in your mouth, which is not what you're looking for. You want the malt to balance against the hops so that it isn't undrinkably bitter, but you don't even necessarily want them to be balanced. You're just looking for the malt to balance out the hop a little bit, bring it back down towards the median a little bit. But in an IPA, you still want it to be a hop forward beer. That's definitely what's happening here. Because it's got crystal malt in it, it's one of the first things you'll notice is some sweetness. And again, I'm saying crystal malt. I'm not 100% sure, but there's a very notably sweet malt quality to it, which you get right away on the palate. And that's fine. There's nothing wrong with that. In terms of the IPA quality, it's very piney. Yeah, definitely more on the green and pine side of the equation than on the citrus equation. There's definitely some maybe white grapefruity kind of bitterness to it for sure. But it's not juicy. Sometimes with those citrusy bitter qualities, you get like a juicy sensation. And this one isn't particularly juicy. It's earthy, it's piney, and it's got a nice malty sweetness to it. And then, yeah, like I say, white grapefruit, I think is probably the best descriptor for the citrus aspect of it. And of course, white grapefruit is quite bitter. It's not fresh and citrusy juicy. It's more sturdy bitterness. And that's what this IPA has. This would be like a West Coast style IPA. If you think about Red Racer would be the one that kind of I got into a long time ago that I'm a fan of. But yeah, you're looking for again, not even balance 50-50, but you're looking for a hop forward beer that has a notable malty quality, that's discernible. And so of course, if you recall, when I've been drinking other beers, say like Life in the Clouds or something, you can go looking for the malt quality and say, oh yeah, there's a nice kind of biscuity or crackery graininess here, but you've really got to spend some time and almost taste the other stuff, the very floral, citrusy fruitiness, and then kind of let that go. And then you can think about what's underneath. With this style of IPA, with that West Coast, you don't have to do that. That malty sweetness is there. It's evident. And that's the case with this beer. On the overall, like on the whole, yeah, pleasingly bitter, like assertively bitter, but not squeaky, piney and earthy, which I like. One of the things, it doesn't smell exactly like this, but what it kind of triggers for me is that smell. And God, I hope you've experienced this, walking through an evergreen forest after it's rained. And there's that earthy, damp kind of smell coming from the ground. And of course, you're surrounded by evergreens. So there's a piney, resinous quality. That's what's going on with these hops. And I love it. I think it's a real nice thing. And again, right now, everyone and their cousin wants to make like a New England IPA that's fruity and all late hop, all aromatic, not a lot of perceived bitterness on the palate. And again, malt profile that you've got to go looking for. This is just, it's a different style of IPA. This is more of the West Coast style where you get that nice sweet maltiness right out of the top. Assertive, as I say, quite dry, bitter hop, but in this case, quite earthy and piney. And then, yeah, very quick, clean finish, as you would expect. Just a lingering bit of the pine kind of hoppiness. It's very tasty. Mm-mm-mm. It sure is. Gosh, I like that beer. As I said, I drink a lot of it at the rugby. Oh, I'm going to hold off on that. We need to talk about food first. And this is a more challenging one. What do you reach for? And this is where you might get into, we talk about spiciness with IPAs. It works well. Because the heat can keep up with the hop, or vice versa. The hop can keep up with the heat in the dish. I would almost like to see like a really traditional spicy, and by spicy I mean hot, but I also mean like spice driven curry. Probably not a coconut curry, not a Southern Indian style, maybe more of a tomato driven one, which I gotta confess, my geographical knowledge of Indian cuisine is limited. I know coconut curries are more normal in the southern part of the country, but outside of that, I'm a little leery. I want you to go with a tomato-based one, though. A tomato-based curry, I think would work really well here. Tomato is going to introduce some sourness, which is an aspect that this beer does not have. There's nothing sour to speak of here. But that earthy quality, I think, especially if you're a meat person, maybe, maybe instead of a curry, if you want like a vindaloo, maybe a lamb vindaloo, that might work really well. Especially, again, you want some nice tart quality from tomato and from vinegar, because that's something the beer is not bringing to the table. But then especially a lamb or a mutton, there's a real, people always say gamey. I hate the term gamey when it comes to meat. Not that wild cows exist anymore, but wild cows would taste gamey. Gaminess is a quality of, it's almost more of terroir. It's not being fed a constant diet of one thing. Creates interesting nuance and flavor in the animals. Even pigs, an Ontario grade A piece of, pork rib that you buy at Loblaws tastes relatively mundane compared to like a Berkshire pig that was raised in an open pen where it can eat a variety of food and whatever. And that's partially breeding, and it's also partially environment. So what was I saying? Oh yeah, gamey is a stupid phrase to use to describe meat. But yeah, maybe a lamb or a mutton vindaloo. Spicy. You want some heat in there. Sourness from the sauce, really sturdy meaty quality to go with the earthy quality in the beer. I think that could be something magic. If you don't get down to the meat, you can do a nice Vindaloo with why am I blanking on what dal is made out of? What are those things called? The little guys. Lentils. Lentils is what we're looking for. Lentils themselves tend not to have a ton of flavor, but what flavor they do have is actually quite earthy. And so rather than trying to add to that, lean into it. So maybe like a nice, what was the word I just used? Lentil Vindaloo. That could be special. I think that'd be a real nice meal with this beer. I myself, actually, I didn't have this with dinner. I had water with dinner, but I had a really nice mushroom cream sauce pasta with some garlic loaf. Because if there's one thing that can make a plate full of carbs better, it's more carbs and fat. And you have to spell more, M-O-A-R, more. Anyway, hey, what's going on? Well, nothing, but I want to tell you about drinking Woodhouse beer at Lamport Stadium, because I think it would be worth going just to drink the beer, if I'm perfectly honest with you. And I know I've talked about this on the podcast before, so hopefully this isn't news to you. But there are two professional rugby clubs here in Toronto, one which plays rugby union and one which plays rugby league, which to the casual outsider might not be the easiest thing to discern between. To the insider, they're almost completely different sports that just happen to use roughly the same size ball. No, it's exactly the same size ball. But the rules are either completely different or quite similar. I often tell people it's a little bit like watching Canadian football versus American football. And of course, by football, I mean Canadian American football, not European football. A lot of the gameplay looks similar, but there's strategically very different things. It's different because in rugby league and rugby union, there are some very pronounced different rules. I don't want to bore you with them, but the point of the matter is they're both fantastic sports to watch. Lamport Stadium, which is where Wolfpack plays exclusively in Toronto and where Arrows play, fantastic sports to watch. Lamport Stadium, where Arrows play most of their games. The problem is that the Arrows season starts earlier, and Lamport as a city property gets domed. It has a bubble over it.